The next segment in our video series is to talk about the origins of ACCBIF. ACCBIF is the Atlantic Canada Community Business Investment Fund. It is a central credit facility that was established really in the year 2000. And our first slide that we're going to speak to for a second is the actual framework that was put together in August of 2000. Prior to that, there was a discussion about the CBCs in Atlantic Canada adopting the Ontario Asset Management Plan. The Ontario Asset Management Plan used Jones Sheward Investments to essentially manage investments. The objective of that asset management plan in Ontario really was to pool the resources within Ontario to get a better return on the dollars that were sitting in bank accounts in the CFs in Ontario. What we were trying to do in Atlantic Canada at the time was to provide for low-cost borrowing for the CBDCs. By pooling the funds on the Ontario Asset Management Plan, perhaps we might have got a better return on our investment, but it didn't provide any kind of mechanism to provide low-cost funding to those CBDCs in need of investment capital. So at the AGM in St. John's in 1999, the Ontario Asset Management Plan was voted down. The executive at the time then worked in earnest to try to come up with an alternative model that they could use to help out with credit granting in Atlantic Canada. Rupert Williams, who was a former vice president of the Business Development Bank of Canada, was commissioned to design a framework to look at a central credit facility for Atlantic Canada. He looked at the information relative to the individual CBCs, took their portfolios, did some analysis on the turnover of their portfolios, the earnings they made, and so on, and working with the association executive at the time, they come up with a model of what this Atlantic Canada Community Business Investment Fund should look like. It was then taken to an AGM in Sydney in September of 2000 for a vote by the membership. The membership endorsed the concept, and then work began in earnest in developing an actual subscription call document that would lay out kind of the objectives and where the fund was going to over the next number of years. The main emphasis of the ACCBIF Central Credit Facility really was to provide a facility that could lend money to CBCs at a low cost. So it was a low cost borrowing mechanism that would be set in place, as well as providing an alternative investment vehicle for those CBCs that had funds surplus to their immediate needs. So when that subscription call document out, it set out several things. And one within it was the mission statement. And it's quite simply put to provide a functioning credit facility to member CBCs in Atlantic Canada. So this was an attempt to provide something that worked. It wasn't to have a big flashy mission statement that said all kinds of things and so on, but really focused on what do we want to do. We want to have something that works for us here in Atlantic Canada. And the vision statement that was incorporated within ACCBIF was really to address and provide for current and future loan fund requirements of its member CBDCs. So that's what this raison d'etre was. It really was to provide that, not only look after the investment fund needs of today, but also investment fund needs over the long term. ACCBIF was never designed to be a profit center. Even though it has generated surpluses over the years, it never was set up to generate a profit. It was trying to find some type of balance, keeping the cost of borrowing to the CBCs very low, at the same time providing a good return for investors. And there were early days, each of the CBCs, as part of the concept, were asked to lend to ACCBIF $50,000 per corporation. That would make up the first capitalization of that central pool or central fund. At the discussion during the AGM in 1999 in St. John's, it was believed that the $50,000 was a bit rich, that some CBCs could not afford the $50,000, but they agreed with the concept in general. So they tasked the executive to go back, kind of rework the numbers and see if you could come up with a lower value. And what ended up coming to be was that each CBC was asked to lend to this new central credit facility a total of $37,500. And that would be a 10-year loan at no interest to the fund, and that would act as initial capitalization. That capitalization would be augmented by contributions made by the federal government through a COA. In 2001, there was $5 million that was provided by the agency to augment the funds contributed by the CBDCs. There was an additional $9.1 million that were provided by the agency, and then it was topped up. Total contributions made by the agency was $15,525,000. The $37,500 that was contributed by the CBCs equated to $1,537,500. The combination of those things really made the initial capital of the pool. Demand for the funds were quite significant, and to the point where there were 6 individual invitational calls going out requesting money from CBCs to meet the demand that were coming from CBCs that needed to borrow funds. All of those invitational calls were oversubscribed. That is to say that if we asked for $2 million to be borrowed from CBCs, we would actually get in excess of $2 million in responses saying, yes, we're prepared to lend money to the fund. So I want to spend a few minutes now talking about kind of the results and the evolution of ACCBIF over the years that it has worked. So for the past 17 years, let's look at the evolution of the CBDCs and the evolution of ACCBIF.